Pleasure being here today. This morning I'm briefly going to update you on stormwater management goals from the Center Region Comprehensive Plan, which was recently adopted. I'm also going to talk about a couple other things that are going on and maybe give you a little bit more about the context of what we do at the Regional Planning Agency, who we are, and kind of what the comp plan means in terms of growth as we go forward. Last year we kind of as a group got together and kind of went through our mission as an agency and did some things internally and tried to figure out what it is we're really trying to do as our mission, which is really try to help to make the Center Region a great place to live. There's some other things that go behind that, but our organization is involved in many, many different things. Land planning at the regional level, local zoning, subdivision development, review of development plans. We're also, of course, the county transportation planning organization, so some things we do countywide as well. I'd like to use this picture of kind of what we think our role is, which is really working with a variety of organizations to make things happen in the community. And this is the celebration for our designation as a bicycle-friendly community, which we had a role in, but we also worked with the Center County Bicycle Coalition, the municipalities, Penn State, and a variety of other organizations to team to make that happen. So that's kind of where we are as an agency. A couple of things I wanted to talk on were, first of all, kind of overall growth in the region and where we're going, and then kind of get into a few of the stormwater management goals and policies in the comprehensive plan, where we are in terms of prioritizing work tasks for our agency based on what our member municipalities want us to work on, and then talk a little bit about how we move forward from this point where we're at right now. This was a great headline yesterday in the CDT. I don't know if you saw that, and while you're eating your Wheaties, and I said, what? And I had a couple of people call me about that headline yesterday about having 2,600 new residences, and I don't think it occurred to many people that Toftrese has been planned for 40 years, as that quote says. It's inside the growth boundary, and has a lot to do with where we are in terms of growth management. That statement for many people just said, oh my God, what's happening? But when you realize it's been going on for a long time, it really is not an emergency at this point. But it does remind us that there is growth coming here slowly over the years. It kind of accrues, but we don't have these big, huge bursts of growth in the region. And the other thing I wanted to point out on growth was we do have the regional growth boundary and source service area. In 2012, we did a regional development capacity report to figure out really how much land do we have in the growth boundary, excuse me, how many dwelling units can we accommodate in there, how much non-residential development can we accommodate in there. And these numbers are really huge, quite frankly. There's a lot of growth potential inside the regional growth boundary source service area. And that's an important part of our planning for the future. And I just want to remind people that capacity is there, and we're working as an agency to put the tools in place to keep that growth as best we can inside the regional growth boundary source service area. But we also do allow growth outside the growth boundary. Generally speaking, you're not going to get on public sewer, but there's no prohibition on growth outside the growth boundary. A couple of those numbers, one is there's over 4,000 acres of vacant land that's developable inside the growth boundary source service area. That's over 6 square miles. There's capacity for over 12,000 dwelling units, and that includes the 2,600 dwelling units that you saw in the previous slide. Almost 7 million square feet of non-residential development. And the latest development is we've had over 1,600 student apartments planned or approved, and actually about 2/3 of those have probably been built so far, with about close to 5,000 beds. So that's another reason. The reason I put that up there is because there's a migration in student housing that's happening in the region as well. It's opening up other housing units in the region, maybe for opportunities for affordable housing and other things. So, in the little cartoon there, it's just a reminder that, some people look at that and see a beautiful meadow and a forest, and other people see condos. So we're trying to get the plan done so that we're all on the same page about what we see out there and what kind of development we want in the future. And the comprehensive plan helps us get to that point. A couple of things on forecasts and kind of what we're thinking of as we've been preparing the comprehensive plan. You know, our population growth forecast in the region is for about 22,000 people over the next 28 to 30 years. So that's a slow, steady growth, kind of similar to what we've seen here historically. We don't anticipate that it's going to accelerate, but it's probably going to remain the same. And of course, that a lot depends on the economy and how we move forward with that. A couple other big things that are going on that affected the comp plan and that were kind of population and demographics. We have an aging population. We're continuing to get older despite the fact we have students here. As a nation and as a region, we're getting older. Family sizes are getting smaller. The composition of families is changing. There's a lot of single head of household families now, which is affecting some of the housing that we see in the region. Transportation and housing costs continue to escalate. It's very expensive to build a house, and as fuel prices continue to rise, that has a huge impact on where people can live. And the lifestyle choices already are making a change in terms of people wanting sustainability, living closer to work, having walkable neighborhoods, and that type of thing. And then thinking a little bit about some of the technological changes on campus. How does technology affect kind of the bricks and mortar part of Penn State? You know, this isn't the twilight of the campus by any stretch of the imagination, but how people learn in higher education is changing as well. And then we have that change in student housing. So that affected some of the things we were doing in the comp plan that I just wanted to touch on briefly, because it affects really the land use development pattern in the region and what we're seeing. And so what we've tried to plan for, based on the fact that we know we have a lot of development capacity in the growth boundary, is to look at a few different things and how we think that might impact the region. You know, we're seeing probably fewer traditional big single-family homes. There's still a market for that, and there always will be. It's kind of funny. The surveys you see from residents are from people who are looking to buy a home said they want to live close to work and shopping, but they also want a single-family home on a big lot. So that's kind of all over the place. We don't really know how that's going to shake out yet, but there's a big contradiction there. So the suburban projects are still alive. But we're also seeing a move to the urban and what we call urban light, excuse me, which is not really a city project, but it's kind of a little higher density than many people are used to seeing. But it's comfortable for maybe empty nesters, people over 55, who want more of a walkable lifestyle. Part of the developments we're seeing in Ferguson Township are like that, along Blue Course Drive. So that's changing how people live as well. Of course, a lot more and more people are shopping with their fingers, and you know, we're not sure what's going to happen to the retail space in the region other than it's probably going to decline. So there's some implications for how we fill in maybe the Atherton corridor over the next 20 years and taking a better look at that. And we're also seeing more diverse mixed-use projects and kind of an infill position for a lot of development. So I think overall we're well positioned, and some of this will work into a couple of the comments I have on the stormwater management policies. But generally speaking, the region is in really good shape, we think, and poised for some of that kind of growth in the future. So just briefly on the comp plan, this is something we started in early 2010. It's a guide for the long-term physical development of the region. We did a resident survey early in the process. We initially started going out and meeting with the community, but had very few people coming to our meetings. So we said we need to change that. We need to go out and see what what people value in the community. So we did a resident survey that provided us some really good information about how people feel about future growth in the region. The comp plan also, it reflects the community values, and it's a list of the goals, objectives, and policies, but nothing in there is prioritized. So when you look at this, this is kind of everything that people want to do in the region. So the next step for us is to get those in priority order and talk about how we're going to do those. And our elected officials just adopted that in November, and we'll next update it in about 10 years. And the last thing I want to say on the comp plan is this is, it's only as good as we make it in the region, and it's only as good as our elected officials implement it. It's a consensus-based plan, and as we continue to work together as a region and try to figure out how we can make things happen by not necessarily reinforcing municipal boundaries and those kind of things, it's better for us. So as a region, that's important to us. And that's the comp plan brings the 6 center region municipalities together to work on planning issues, although much of that authority is held at the local level. So in terms of stormwater management plan, comprehensive plan policies, there's probably 8 or 10, and these are kind of the overall, to paraphrase the specific policies in the plan, is one. The first one is the inventory and manage stormwater facilities. Part of what we were thinking was that homeowners associations, other kind of entities that have stormwater management responsibilities, but they're not well integrated. Some of these homeowners associations over the long term have a hard time managing those facilities and maintaining those facilities, and we want to try to work on that a little bit. Another specific municipal action would be to be reducing impervious coverage and also providing maybe ordinances that allow more pervious surfaces to allow infiltration. Encourage low impact design. We've had at least one presentation at the CRPA on getting low impact design incorporated into subdivision ordinances and other land development ordinances, and that's something that is in the plan. We also have a specific policy to support the best management practices from the Conservation District to minimize erosion. Also encourage the use of urban and suburban best management practices. We have a policy for public education moving forward as well. Elimination of improper discharges, methods to address pre and post stormwater plans, and then also to help locate funding sources to pay for some of these things as well. These are very broad policies, I realize that, and they're kind of open-ended in many respects because that's the comp plan is just a really broad brush look at some of these things. So as we move forward, we'll be putting some more detail into what we're doing. So, and those policies are really just represent the stormwater management part of the plan. There's of course a lot of other goals, policies, objectives in there. So what we're doing now is working with our municipalities on prioritizing the goals, objectives, and policies in the plan. We went out to the municipal planning commissions in the fall of last year to start getting some feedback, and for us it was just all over the map. Every time we went out there, what do you want us to do? We'd get 6 different answers. So we're continuing to work on that as a group in our agency to get those prioritized. We'll take that back out to the municipalities to get buy-in to make sure we're working on what they want us to work on. Of course, we'll get that aligned with our staffing constraints like all of you. We have pretty small staff. We have 2.3 full-time employees for regional planning and other people in the municipalities. So that's all a work in progress. But just to give you kind of what some of the things that are emerging as priorities that we think might rise to the surface. One is affordable housing continues to be high on the list, and these aren't in any particular order. Zoning outside and inside the regional growth boundary and sewer service area. Last year we prepared a report for the municipalities on zoning districts outside the growth boundary and how changes could be made so that we could continue to reinforce preservation of agriculture, open space outside the growth boundary, what kind of things they had in their individual zoning districts that maybe were not compatible with a rural lifestyle outside the growth boundary. So that has some relationship, I think, to stormwater management goals as well. Economic development activities continue to be a priority for some of the municipalities, not all of them. They're interested in kind of how can we work at the local level to streamline some of the processes so that as we move forward with smaller economic development projects, you know, how do you get a small business person that maybe has a great project that doesn't know how to build a how to pull a building permit through the process and help facilitate that kind of thing. Improve transportation choices. We continue to work on bicycle planning mostly, but also we'll probably be taking a look at how people get around in the region and improve some of the pedestrian connections that we have between neighborhoods, schools, commercial areas, and that kind of thing. A couple of the practical things that we're doing is we told the municipalities that we'd be providing metrics for implementing the comprehensive plan, so we are currently working on what we're going to measure to prove that we're doing what we told them we would do. We'll also be doing an update on the Regional Development Capacity Report, which I mentioned earlier in the presentation, to see how much of that development has been absorbed over the past couple of years. The last point here is, you know, preservation of the natural environment is a major theme in the comp plan and something that was elevated really early in the process, something that was clear when we did our resident survey. But as we've gone out to the municipalities, stormwater management is kind of a standalone issue, really hasn't risen up. We haven't heard a lot about that. So that's what we're kind of onto now, is kind of how can we work to help identify this as a major priority with our municipalities, and how can we leverage our time to support the members and partner with other groups. I know there's several things going on, and I know there's a conference coming up later in the spring to talk about some of these issues, but you know, as I mentioned, it hasn't been elevated regionally. I think it's an important issue. Some of the things I talked about kind of cross over to stormwater management if we're working on zoning ordinances and subdivision ordinances, so some of it kind of creeps in there, but it hasn't emerged as a standalone issue in the region. So I'm looking for some help from you if this is important. How can we help you leverage some of the tools that we have to work on this? And I also see this as an effort that would be something like what we did with the bicycle friendly community project. Is we had a role in that, but we worked with the Bicycle Coalition and the municipalities to make that happen. So that's kind of where we're at. I'd be happy to take any feedback, suggestions, or get some feedback on what you're working on that we can help with. So I'd be happy to answer any questions and take any comments.